think many of us assume that because Jesus is God and the way he started was so supernatural, that there's no way that we could ever model what he did. God showed me something that set me free, and hopefully it set some of you free. If Jesus lived as a human being while trusting fully in God, what can I copy from him? What I learned gave me the courage to start. Number one, Jesus didn't let people's opinions about his background define him. Jesus came from Nazareth. Say it was the slums of the time. This can be inferred from someone in the Bible who, when introduced to Jesus, he was like, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Jesus never let his environment determine where he was going. He didn't let his environment confuse the assignment that God had already put in his heart. Number two, Jesus wasn't afraid to be misunderstood or hated. One thing about Jesus, when he was on this earth, he would always speak the truth, even when it stirred the pot, without filtering it for people's comfort. He never filtered it. He wasn't asking, am I doing too much? Is this too much? Is this gonna cause offense? Number three, he prioritized solitude. There's many verses in scriptures where it says that he often withdrew to solitary places. It says that he would spend the night by a mountainside just in silence praying. He prioritized making space for God to pour into him. What was fueling him was his communion with God. This was a priority that he had to make time for. Number four, Jesus didn't need people's approval to understand who he was or what he was called to do. He just went ahead and did it. He already had the seal of approval from the Most High, and that's all he needed. That was the only green light he needed. Number five, Jesus' work. Jesus was a carpenter. He made a living with his creations. That was his family business with Joseph. So he created with his hands before his ministry ever began. Number six, Jesus placed himself where the people were. And he didn't just go anywhere. He went to specific places where he saw that there was a need. For example, after he was done with his work, he went to the synagogues. They were the community centers of the time, and Jesus was constantly there, day by day. He showed up consistently. Jesus would teach, and he would read scripture in the synagogues. That was the original platform that really people started to notice, who is this man who teaches with such authority, who reads the word, and he's so young for his age. It says in Mark chapter 1, verse 21, they went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, Jesus went into the synagogue and began to teach. The people were amazed at his teaching because he taught them as one who had authority, not as the teachers of the law. So that daily consistency is how word began to spread about him. Which leads me to my next point. He positioned himself strategically to be seen and heard. Jesus didn't shrink back. He spoke openly without fear and allowed his light to be visible to others. He understood that purpose doesn't grow in hiding or putting a box over it. That's why the very famous parable where he's saying a city on a hill cannot be hidden. You cannot put a lamp on a nightstand and put a basket over it to cover the light. You put it on a nightstand so it could give light to the whole room. Number 8, Jesus didn't let his own family's doubts define him. Even his own brothers didn't believe in him. Jesus said, "Who are my mother and my brothers? The ones who do the will of God. Those are my mother and my brothers." He teaches us that your family won't always understand the assignment and the vision that God has put in your heart. Often they'll be the very same ones that Satan will use to crush that seed that God has put in your heart. And it's beautiful to see that Jesus himself also went through that when family is casting doubts. Even though Mary, his mom, knew who he was, Joseph, but Jesus' own brothers teased him and said, "We've seen you grow up. Who do you think you are now that you are claiming to be the Messiah?" It says in John chapter 7, verse 5, Jesus' brothers said to him, "Leave Galilee and go to Judea so that your disciples there may see the works you do. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you are doing these things, show yourself to the world." Verse 5, for even his own brothers did not believe in him. Even in this verse, they were nitpicking at Jesus. Don't you want to be a public figure? Put yourself out there. Teasing him because they didn't believe the works that he was doing. Number 9, Jesus left his hometown and surrounded himself with people who sought God's will. Jesus was accepted and received in other towns where he performed most of his miracles. But in the other towns that rejected him and had little faith, nothing happened. He didn't perform many miracles in those towns. The right ones will say yes to you. Don't let the no's from the wrong people make you believe that there's something wrong with you. The people around you may not believe in you and think you're wrong, but that doesn't make them right. Sometimes you have to leave people where they are so that you can meet the right ones that are willing to grow with you and accept you. And it's up to us. It's our choice whether we accept the limits people place on us. Number 10, faith was everything for Jesus. Faith is everything for Jesus. Faith isn't a fairy tale, it's a necessity. Faith is something that must be practiced and deepened because that is what moves the mountains. And in this case, the mountain is you. So in Jesus' own words, according to your faith, let it be done to you. That's what finally freed me. I stopped waiting for confidence to be given to me. I just started to act. I realized that obedience comes first and confidence follows. I started before I felt ready, and this is why I started YouTube. Not because I stopped caring about what people think. I started caring more about obedience to what God put in my spirit rather than approval. I hope this blesses any other small creator or YouTuber that is getting started out there, that God's put a chip in your heart. He's put a chip in your spirit to start, but there's a little friction there. There's resistance. Model and copy Jesus's life. God bless.